I'm gonna turn this over to Adam Breed, who is and now I'm gonna do it, Chief of Innovation with Lockheed Martin. And we're gonna hear all about his wonderful presentation on the stuff that they're doing with Lockheed and Unreal.
Cool. Sure. I'm gonna stand up so you can get me on video. Stand back here and make sure I'm not lost. Yeah.
You're great.
If you could full screen it, and then I think we just have to switch.
Let's see here. So I haven't done this a long time.
The little bottom icon, the little easel.
This,
Yes.
there we go.
Okay. So think about it, and then just push it in. And then we have to go to display settings,
Okay. There we go.
and then duplicate slideshow. I think we should be good to go. We tested this a little bit earlier. There are some videos that are going to lag, but
That's different.
maybe lock it in. There we go. What? Oh, because you're putting the screen in front of it. Maybe just like.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
Now we're putting on gas.
Oh, it's already.
All right.
This is.
Did it pop back up? That's the way the video. We'll make it focus up.
I don't know what this is doing. I'm so sorry. Stop that.
We'll kick it off with the video. Go ahead and return this.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, and all those assets were created obviously in Unreal Engine, actually by our aeronautics group. They have a visual communications group that uses Unreal Engine for a lot of our, I would say like, conceptual photographs and such. So we have a big group out of that, completely different business area, which I'm going to cover a little bit. But those were all assets and footage made using Unreal Engine. We go to the next slide. Again, so great. All right, so to kind of walk through this, I'm going to give a brief overview of what Lockheed Martin does, who we are. I know we have some former employees in here, so you probably know it well, but maybe it's a good update. Then I'm actually going to cover the problem space and what's changed and why Lockheed is interested in gaming technology. I'm going to discuss how we're solving it internally and the opportunities, as Tally mentioned, why we're here, and that's to create partnerships and find collaborators on a lot of our tech stack. And then I'm also going to close with a couple real examples of how we're using this right now today and where we're inserting it in our portfolio to do things better, faster, cheaper, which is kind of my directive here. So who is Lockheed?
Sorry to interrupt real quick. Can you all hear me? We are not seeing the slides. Would it be possible to try sharing one more time?
Okay, sure. Let's see here.
Which means they missed a couple videos.
Here.
We'll send these slides out too. These are all fully approved. To kind of spoil it, and this is probably good, Mark's team with Epic Games has not posted everything from Unreal Fest. This is a similar speech that I did to Unreal Fest. I think you guys are posting a lot of those videos just as they come up. I have approved it. So this will share a similar theme. So if for some reason something doesn't record right or something doesn't come across well, or you want to re-reference it and send it to your coworkers, the Unreal Fest speech will be posted at some point. This is just kind of an updated version of it. Cool. All right, so Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin, we've hired a lot more since I last gave this speech. We have 122,000 employees across 4 business areas. So 122,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're a big company. One of the easy ways to think about it though is we're not we kind of operate almost as 4 companies in one. So we have 4 different business areas, and they each have very differing objectives, but we all do collaborate and work together quite well. Aeronautics is who most people outside of these walls think of when they think of Lockheed Martin. The F-35, F-16s, F-22s, that is the aeronautics group. They manufacture aircraft, they manufacture things that fly in the sky. That's also where our Skunk Works, our AVP teams are. That's the advanced side of the Lockheed Martin from the standpoint of experimental aircraft and such. That's all under that umbrella. Then I'm going to jump down one, missiles and fire control. That's we almost refer to it as our sister business area because they're right down the street, right next to Universal Studios. They are more focused on kind of the fire control systems, air missile defense, a lot of those kind of sensors and things that we would hook to things that fly. At the bottom right is space. Space, again, we're known for a lot of stuff that flies into space, specifically Orion, the SLS. That's all done by that group and that division. So, a lot of stuff out west, Colorado, that area, there's a lot of facilities out there. Where I sit is under the Rotary Mission Systems group. And there's 2 things that this group's kind of known for that I hear a lot is Sikorsky. That's where Sikorsky sits, our Rotary group. And this is also where our training and logistics group sits, which is what I'm a part of. So again, 4 business areas, 4 kind of slightly independent groups that all collaborate and cooperate together. And then I'm coming from the Rotary Mission Systems group under what we refer to as TLS. And so one of the kind of really important highlight here is while we're about 120,000 people, about half of them are engineers, scientists, and technologists. That's really important when we talk about why we're heading with Unreal and what we're doing with Unreal, that we have a huge brain trust of extremely intelligent individuals we can leverage to enhance pieces of Unreal to make it usable by our customers. So we think about fellows, you think about experts across aeronautics, experts across space. We can leverage their domain expertise and use Unreal to help train, coordinate, and visualize a lot of their own environment and technologies using this gaming engine technology. A lot of facilities, we operate worldwide, and we have a big international base as well. So Lockheed's a huge company. We have a lot of resources and a lot of availability to do some pretty unique and special things. You know, the next slide. So why are we here? And I can say part of the cool part of having a big company is it's sometimes hard to coordinate and do things across BAs, and unless you can find some standards and some baseline that we all agree to is valuable and something we want to coordinate and collaborate on. So it goes to the next slide. Just thinking about it.
It's, I don't know.
No, it's just breaking the world.
Yeah, it's really just not loving us back.
Page down.
There's a video.
All right.
In the background.
I think we have to stop and re-expand it real quick.
Yep. All right.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, sorry guys. We really thought that you'd be able to just share a normal PowerPoint. Let me check this. Okay, so
You just keep it in presenter mode for the time being, I guess. Or,
I think we should do that. Let's go here. And let's do this. And here. Yeah, it's definitely Microsoft.
Alright.
All right,
we'll try this.
okay.
Sharing screen, can we all see the Unreal Engine both?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
So what did we come with in our philosophy of how we were trying to change and what we were trying to leverage? Because I've been involved in games for training for almost 2 decades. And there's never a perfect answer, but there's sometimes the right answer. And what we saw was independently, a lot of our business areas were exploring with Unreal Engine. A group in one area using it for visual comms, a group in one area using it for data visualization, and one area using it for maintenance training, one area. And so we noticed this potential nexus that we could start working and collaborating together. And this is really important because we are on a path to become one Lockheed Martin. We're collapsing some business systems. We're finding ways to be more efficient. We are on a big multi-year journey to basically be better at being one company. And this is a kind of a key piece of that story because as we've all done for probably many years is invest heavily in things like 3D model creation. That's a very expensive avenue is building 3D models and 3D content. So if For instance, aeronautics has to do it for a maintenance trainer. Wouldn't it be great if the training and logistics group in RMS could leverage that same model? You could always do it saying, hey, we're going to share 3DS models, but there's a major efficiencies gain when we're using kind of the whole solution, which Unreal helps provide, that whole content pipeline. And this is what we're pushing forward, is all 4 business areas are partnering in this shared development environment. That does mean source code. That does mean an architecture to facilitate that, architecture to control that. What this also opens up, though, and this is why I'm here, is just as you can say, we operate as 4 independent businesses, which is not true, but it allows us to set up that infrastructure to collaborate. And that allows us to pull everybody else in, from big defense contractors to small businesses and vice versa. And that's why we're really here to drive this point home and discuss the history of, we are looking to collaborate. We're looking to learn what you're doing. What we don't need to do is very important. And what you don't want to do because we're doing it is that bi-directional conversation we're looking to have with everybody. And then we're also looking to understand what are small businesses doing that we can leverage. If we have a customer come to us with a need, who is our bench that we call to support and attack and respond to a customer? And you should also know that from us as well. And I'll go into some details with that, but that's really what we're after. That's why we're talking. That's why we're being pretty transparent with what we're investing and what we're doing with this technology stack. All right, next slide. See if the slide's working again.
There we go.
All right, and this might be baseline knowledge for a lot of you, but I think it's really important to understand, why hasn't this happened before? Why have we struck now? And why are we so passionate about thinking this is going to work and finally be the solution that works in this collaborative environment where it didn't before? It's kind of simple in a lot of ways. What happened in the gaming industry? It's less what happened in the defense industry, and it's much more what shifted in the gaming industry. In this slide, the top bar is the traditional premium price gaming model. And that's how I grew up. Every year there was a sports release, and every 3 years, there was a major AAA game release. And that's how it worked. And it was Nintendo and Sony and a little bit of Microsoft competing against each other to one-up each other. That created a lot of innovation. That created a lot of great stuff. But what it didn't do is mimic how the defense world contracts. What changed was the emergence of free-to-play. And this happened mainly because the internet allowed teams to sustain products. Before, if Nintendo released a game on Nintendo 64 and it was on a cartridge, there was no way to update and sustain that. Once it was out the door, it was out the door, and there was no real great way to update it. When the internet and the whole entire philosophy around free-to-play emerged, that allowed game developers to focus on an initial development release and then sustain it almost indefinitely. And there's 2 major examples that are used often. The first is Roblox. Roblox is a great example of this, and the one that's more applicable to this is Fortnite. So Fortnite is the bigger one. I have a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old boy, Blake and Ryan. I think I have funded Epic Games healthfully. I just had to buy a Donatello skin because my kids were making fun of me playing Fortnite with them because I used the generic people models, and they were embarrassed by me. So I was forced to drop that $10 or whatever it was to buy Donatello because I'm an Ninja Turtles fan, and now I'm cool. So I got my victory crown.
That's all you've dropped so far. Wow.
No.
Come talk to me.
Well, I have dropped a lot of money, not on myself though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I bought V-Bucks. I for Christmas, I think it was well over a couple $100 of V-Bucks. I mean, so. Way early retirement, Mark. Yeah, I want to spend a lot of money on V-Bucks. You know, when I was at Unreal Fest, the kids were like, "So, are you going to get us free V-Bucks?" I'm like, "That's how they make money. I don't think they're going to be giving those out." But I managed to shake some trees, and I think some V-Bucks fall from it. So anyway, that's the big change. And as you see at the bottom, if you're in the defense industry, you understand that is kind of our development cycle in many ways as well. We were talking right before. You're still supporting programs that have been around for 20 plus years. So am I. When you look at programs like the F-35 training, that's going to be around multi-decades. So we have to go through and build something and then find a way to support it forever. That's what's so interesting, is now we can partner with the gaming industry and expect them to continue maturing their baselines and their products. We're going to continue maturing our baselines and products. We can stay lockstep. We're giving more value to the customer with limited extra expense because it is supplemented by a commercial revenue stream. That makes us better, cheaper, faster. That makes the gaming products better. And that makes the defense products so much better. And it allows us to have a baseline standard we can all work in together independently and collaborate at some point in that thread. Super powerful, super big change of how the world works from a gaming standpoint, but it allows us to finally say we hit the I believe button and leverage this tech stack for our uses. Slide. So how is Lockheed doing it? What we do, at least as an internal code word, is called Milverse. And Milverse obviously is a play on the metaverse with maybe a military focus, or you can think Millenniumverse, where it's going to last for 1,000 years, whatever way you suit your fancy. But the point is, this is our internal code word. And I want to preface it to, it's not necessarily Lockheed's going to be selling Milverse. We will invite collaborators into it. We will leverage plugins, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But Milverse is kind of like our internal code word. We will be launching and developing products that are built on this Milverse framework. Whether you hear us talk about it outside of these kind of collaboration settings or in more general briefs, I don't know yet. But internally, this is our code word for our collaborative environment you saw on the second slide there. So we'll go talk a little bit about the next slide. We'll cover a little bit of what we're doing, what the concept is, what are some minimal viable products. And the concept is we're just bringing the world's best gaming technology and integrating it into our advanced simulation training offerings. Super simple. I think we all kind of understand that and understand what we're trying to do with that. We looked at a lot of gaming technologies. We use a lot of gaming technologies. In a company with 120,000 people, and I don't even know how many programs, hundreds, if not thousands, there's never going to be one answer. We will use competitive products. We will continue to build our own products. This is never going to be the one answer, but again, I'm not hoping for perfect. I'm hoping to do things better, and this is the path forward for that. So the question is, okay, we kind of have the bottom of that chart there. What does Unreal Engine enable? We're all part of this group. We understand realistic 3D visuals, photorealistic, geospecific, point-of-need deployments that will deploy across various hardware. We don't have to do a lot of work there. Large entity counts at Unreal Fest. Epic Games talked about supporting potentially 1 million actors. That's great. I need that. I need that for my constructive scenarios. I need that for my future joint all domain scenarios. Those are important to me. And I don't want to have to code all of those entity component systems services. I would love if Epic does that. Easier operations. There's great tool sets and UIs. I don't have to worry about that. I can just worry about my content. And then this will enable us to be affordable and faster. My teams have written multiple times clouds. I've written clouds in everything from DirectX, OpenGL. We've had teams that, fortunately now there's plugins, there's resources to leverage where I don't have to do that as much anymore. I maybe just tweak them or expand their use case a little bit, but I'm not writing clouds for the nth time. So what is Lockheed Martin adding to it? Well, this is where we leverage what we're good at. You can think a good example is that systems integration, the aerodynamics, ballistics, and sensors. We were talking a little bit about AGTS before. There's a whole customer validated ballistics model that we own that we can incorporate into Unreal Engine and use. Validated, proven, we can pull that into it. Another great example is our operational flight programs from, for instance, the F-35 or F-16. Those are Lockheed Martin proprietary information, but we can integrate those into Unreal Engine and make super accurate, super realistic next-gen simulators. That's something we're going to own and we want to do. When you look at things like large-scale entity counts, that's going to have to be a double cooperation between Epic Games installing the infrastructure and us building the scenarios and content to support that. The management of it, the creation of it, that's something we want to focus on. Security-focused content, that's talking about defense-related assets. So you can think of certain helicopters, aircraft. We want to own that and build that with you and add that content where you can't commercially put it in Unreal Engine, obviously. Open interfaces and standard. This is something that I really want to talk with the group about as well, is we all know DIS and HLA. I think there's 2 or 3 very public releases. Obviously, internally, we also have DIS and HLA plugins that integrate to engines. Is there a de facto standard we all want to agree on? Does somebody want to take on that I'm writing the HLA that's going to integrate with all of the Unreal Engine-based sims? Maybe, let's talk about it. I don't want to see Leidos make one, Pitch make one, Lockheed make one, Boeing make one, and we all have this, these half-baked DIS plugins that are all competing against each other. I don't think that's the best value per money for our customer. I also think it's kind of, not sustainable. And I think with the fact that Unreal is open, we don't have to do that anymore. We just have to kind of coordinate and decide who's doing what and who has the best one currently. I think that's a super helpful approach. But we do want to talk about open interfaces and standard and how we leverage that and what we do as a team. Scenario generation and coordination, I mentioned this a little bit, but how are we making these big, massive scenarios using Unreal Engine? If you know one of our other products, Prepared is a flight simulator that was based on the old Microsoft Flight Simulator code base. One of the main areas of investment into that was the scenario generation tool called SimDirector. When you're building these for the military's use, you have to build those interfaces to allow them to create their own scenarios. It's not going to always be a contractor sitting there developing that scenario. So we got to build those tools to help them integrate their real tools and be a better training asset. Another thing we're seeing, obviously, I think, if you say the words artificial intelligence, money's still printing a little bit, but there is a key piece before that we need to address, and that's that data collection. Unreal has a lot of data because it's based in that gaming world where they want to get those metrics in that data. What data are we collecting? That's another thing Lockheed Martin is heavily invested in. And then, obviously, one of the big powers is the behavior tree systems and the AI systems that Unreal has built for games. You can see one of the minimum viable products is that ground semi-automated forces. There's certain doctrine that ground soldiers do. That will never be in the Unreal Engine core as a release. Unreal Engine is generic for that purpose. We're never going to put doctrinally correct behaviors. We know Epic will never put that in that engine. That's something Lockheed is very well experienced with, is those doctrinally correct behaviors that soldiers move and do what they're supposed to. That is something we will do, but using that tool stack for AI. So that's a great example in my mind of that minimum viable product is going to be very impressive because we're leveraging all of the stuff we've seen in games that I don't even know if the defense industry has very much addressed because it wasn't possible before. When we talk AGTS, it was things popping up and popping down. What if we can make it more immersive? What if we can make it better? And that's something we're. I'm going to, a couple more things on the minimum viable product side. Very cool. We're looking at this for, one of the things I wanted to highlight here was, one of the things we've all experienced too was, at least in the traditional image generator realm, there was often a ground version because you have to do different rendering techniques when you're on the floor, and there was a flight version. That was very common. There's still a little bit of need for that, but with Unreal Engine's kind of scaling of their engine in support of many use cases, that likely could be collapsed down to one. And you're LODing things, you're pulling things in and out, you're using a lot of the systems to allow it to scale up and down without having two different code bases. So one of our platforms is a fast-moving helicopter that's low to the ground sometimes. We need to be able to solve that middle ground, and we are going to use Unreal Engine to generate those visuals. Another one, and I'm going to dive into this deeper, is the math libraries concurrent pipeline for live soldier training. If you see in our press releases, we refer to it as SimRes, and I'll cover that in just a little bit, but this is creating virtual bullets. And then the last one is what you've seen a lot, with visualizing of 3D models for logistics, so we can hook up certain data and generate those 3D models in real time. So that's something else we're exploring with using Unreal Engine. All right. So how are we doing it? And I mentioned this a little bit. If you know Unreal Engine's code base, you can leverage a lot of plugins. And we are setting up build structures and software factories to pull in the components you care about and to drop the ones you don't. And so you are allowed to be extremely efficient with what you pull in and what you don't. And you can create all of these products using effectively one single code base, but turning on the pieces you care about and turning off the pieces you don't. So this is a fairly common design paradigm that pretty much follows the Unreal Engine SDK pretty tightly, but that infrastructure, and we currently use Git, to enable this is allowing us to do some pretty creative things. So for instance, I mentioned the intelligent ground staff. If you really want high fidelity soldiers and the image generator kind of capabilities together, it's just making that happen. You're not writing blueware because Unreal is that glue. If you're doing a helicopter visual and you don't need it, you just exclude that. And so you can kind of enhance and scale up and down fidelity using these plugins. And this is kind of a non-traditional approach, but this is where the collaboration becomes really, really powerful. You mentioned the Distant HLA plugins. Okay, that's a plugin. If your system does or doesn't need it, you drop it or add it. And as long as we follow a lot of the standards that are built into Unreal and design almost like the Unreal Engine Marketplace does in many ways, this becomes a lot easier. It might not be perfectly seamless, but it becomes a lot easier versus the way it was done in the past where I had a proprietary image generator, you had a proprietary image generator, you developed this. That can be broken apart or at least streamlined a lot more than ever possible before. And so again, you can kind of see some of the simulation application and service examples, the IG simulation host flight model, that's another plugin. And I'll have another slide in a second here, the cinematic forces, extended reality simulators. These are all, puzzle pieces you can glue together to create these technology pipelines and these technology products. All right. So here's an example in two ways when we talk, like say for instance, medium fidelity and high fidelity systems. What that's trying to show is the engine, which is Unreal Engine in this case. If you have a medium fidelity setup, you can do a traditional, almost game design technique where you have the actor, you have the entity, and it's emulation. It flies like an aircraft, it acts like an aircraft, it's pretty good. Like that, and that's good for a lot of training use cases. The train, it's a database you can plug in. It maybe is a higher inset of an airfield. Cool, got it, that's extremely valuable, but maybe I don't want to redo everything. How do I make it high fidelity with keeping everything else the same? Clouds, water, user interfaces, all that good stuff. Well, I can drop the emulation and plug in that operational flight program I mentioned a little bit earlier. That allows me to keep everything else the same, but guess what? Now I'm flying the real aircraft. Now I effectively have a high fidelity, and I don't want to jump to level D. I'm not saying it's a level D simulator, but it meets kind of all of those expectations of a customer that it's not an emulation, it's not fake, it is the real training device at that point. So it allows us to kind of leap forward ahead and keep everything else the same and plug and play those systems and components we're really good at. It also allows us to go a lot faster because we can start with the emulation, get something in the customer's hands while we develop that real system behind the scenes. And that's really good for things like I mentioned earlier, our advanced concepts groups, our advanced programs groups. They need things quicker. They need to experiment. They need to test. They need to evaluate. This allows us to pull that off. And then, of course, with Unreal Engine support across phone, tablets, desktops, we all know that well. We can build it once and deploy it anywhere. And that's a big reason why we went with Unreal Engine as well. On the terrain concept side, this is just a layering of terrain. And this is really important when we talk things like one world terrain. When we talk, how do we collaborate with groups? We collaborated with Black Shark, for instance, before. How do we kind of achieve the one world terrain, but also enhance it for these specific customers based on these plugins? And that's just using the terrain content pipeline that comes with Unreal and then managing those layers accordingly. So another great example is, okay, I have an airport I need to plug in, I have satellite imagery, and I have high detailed city insets. We might also get told by the customer, well, you got to leverage our terrain service. Fortunately, the terrain pipeline is fairly mature, and everybody in the defense industry has kind of said, I need to have some support for Unreal Engine. I'm going to make whatever my content is work with it. And we're seeing a lot of that, and that again allows us to keep most of the stuff on the left the same and just plug in different scalings of terrain to make it meet both the customer needs and the cost point that they're after if they've already, for instance, bought the terrain. So what are we doing? And where are we at in this journey? And this is, if you're familiar with some design patterns, this is almost a strangler pattern for creating and reinventing kind of what you've done. What I'm trying to show here is phase one. As you know, Lockheed has decades and decades of gaming IP. And in some ways you could say, well, just rip the visual out and plug Unreal Engine in. And that's true and valid, and there is tons of value add to doing that. But there's a much more powerful value add to hit that plugin system is breaking apart each of our previous IP and building plugins where there's value add. The other part of that is not redoing something that Unreal does better. And we've explored that, we've evaluated that. There's not a black and white answer at all, but there are things like I mentioned earlier that we know Unreal will never do. They will never do doctrinally correct behavior for soldiers, and they will never do an F-16 OFP. That is something we can close and we can use and we can share and we can figure out how we're going to release it to the customer, how we're going to monetize it, and how we're going to talk about that. That's part of this whole story. So we're going to break apart all the things we can, drop them into Milverse, and then rebuild those products from it. And that allows us to keep that thread of constant improvements of plugins. And for instance, if the flight game engine and the image generator both need better clouds, we do it in the Milverse and then both get that product enhancement downstream. So this has been pretty powerful. We are investing considerable amounts of research and development funds into this. And we are looking for the things, again, that we don't have to either break apart and reuse. Who else is doing what else that we can just acquire from you, work with you on, mature with you on in that box that we can include, maybe not as source code in Milverse, but as a hook, as a plugin that we can leverage. So here's an example, and here's where it gets really fun and really interesting. I want to give a little bit of backstory here. SimRes is our virtual bullet system. And this is from the team and individuals that previously worked on Miles. And Miles is a laser tag system, is the easiest, simplest way to think about it. So when you're doing live fires training, people wear vests, you put laser detectors on vehicles, and you shoot a laser and you effectively judge hits, kills, misses. You train like that, you do it in the real field. This is real world. This is not virtual, you're doing it in the real world, you're shooting lasers and you're getting scored and you're coordinating, you're collaborating. So think about it as a massive scale laser tag. There's a lot of problems with that though. It's still amazing technology, it's still worked for decades, but there's problems that the customer have always identified. And the two most obvious ones are, if I shoot and a leaf falls in front of me, the leaf's hit and I'm judged as a miss. That's not good training, that's not positive training. The next one is I can't lead targets. If you've ever got a firearm over a long distance, the laser is instance. It travels as fast as the speed of light. Bullets don't operate that way. There's other environmental impacts, obviously. So we started evaluating how can we overcome these, and how can we overcome these in an affordable way? And the answer was effectively creating a digital twin of the battlefield, and then using, like I mentioned, things like ballistic algorithms that we've had for decades that are proven and accurate, and incorporating them together and effectively creating virtual bullets that we judge hits and misses in the 3D scene. And then coordinating between the sensors fused on the soldier and whether in the 3D virtual world based upon mapped where you are, and coordinating all of that. It's amazing what this team has done. It sounds sort of simple because we all have GPS, we all know where the person is, but coordinating the gun, where the person's looking, sensor fusing it all together, and creating all of those matrix math algorithms to judge where you're looking, what you're doing, how you're standing is actually quite complex. And then you also have the fact that the Earth is a big magnet and it messes with stuff. There's a whole bunch of issues here that I mentioned those, smart people are working, but what we're leveraging for that is Unreal Engine, to be completely honest. So we're creating that virtual digital twin of the battlefield, combining all of those positional sensor fused algorithms and then all of our ballistics models, and we've created this kind of replication of the real battlefield in this game engine, and we're able to judge those hits and misses. That was never possible before. And that overcomes all the limitations of the laser. It's a much more cheaper system, and we can do things like, there's an example here of, you can put material codes on the textures in Unreal effectively, and when you shoot the brick, it doesn't go through the brick, but if you say it's hay, it shoots through the hay. So you get all this cool exercise coordination control, and then there's a bunch of great windfall benefits as well. Like, since you're doing the virtual Earth, you get the after action review right away. Like, you can see it all. You can fly anywhere. You can do anything. There's all these cool benefits. And then when we talk about exploring where we take it with things like augmented reality, these are all on the table thanks to kind of the integration of the Unreal Engine pieces. So you can go to the next slide, and I have a couple examples. You can see the real and the Unreal. We partnered with Blackshark. We use a lot of Blackshark's algorithms to generate this, and they helped us out kind of create these examples. To be completely transparent, that's not necessarily what it looks like in the actual sensor fusion system. This is a kind of a mock-up to illustrate how it's being operated. But it's pretty powerful to think like we can get pretty close one-to-one with not a ton of effort, by the way. There's another slide here too, just kind of give you perspective. This is actually behind our facility. Next one? Yeah, you're good. This is, if you've been to our facility in Orlando, you can kind of see the back parking lot. We've replicated and created a lot of that. So when we talk though, like I mentioned, the intelligent ground sat, if you want augmented artificially intelligent people, it's just another plugin. So, all right, and I'm going to show, next up is a quick video of our other R&D efforts we're pursuing. You're going to see a lot of visuals of it. I know the video is a little bit choppy, but I think it gives you a good kind of level setting where we're at. This footage is about a year old, to be honest, as well, but you get an idea of what we're building, what we're working on. There's a little bit of SimRes at the end to give you a feel. They show like the real world and the sensor fused world together. They have a good visual of that, so go ahead. This is the what we were trying to show there. We're trying to make the soldiers behave as they were in the environment. So whatever it is, the tree there, people should act friendly at they're acting at sea level. If you kind of put them on the ground, Yeah, so you can see we both are in the scenario that if there's an issue going on at speed, so we just have to plan their routes and get to the escape point, which is the real. That's part of that. This is kind of more of the traditional image generator approach to see. This again is using a little bit of flash chart data. Just experimenting with different paradigms, trains, and trees, and all that stuff that features.
In the black chart side of things, we'll be hearing from them in May as well. Series.
A lot of their creation pretty so, here's an example of all the data getting fed directly into Unreal, and let's just judge you can this one, so you saw the little line inset, and extracting where they're looking, where their gun held. Gonna click it one more time. There we go. All right, so kind of to wrap everything up and to close kind of why I'm here, we're doing this to unify our developments and to reduce cost and increase capabilities. We are doing this also to open up our entire brain trust. It kind of happened organically, but we're leveraging it now and pulling in the pieces we can and leveraging those resources internally as much as we can. We want to continue to advance with that industry standard software, and I know it's not well, with the industry and standardized as much as possible. What I mean for that is it's nice to see that the government necessarily isn't mandating use Unreal. I'm sure Mark would very much like that, but I think it speaks a testament to the technology stack that we are a lot of us have independently come to the same conclusion. So let's exploit that. I don't know how many times that happens in a technology. I haven't seen it ever happen. I feel like often we are competing more than we're collaborating on the same tech stack. I think Unreal's kind of won in many ways. So let's, now that we're all on the same sheet of music, let's try to exploit those benefits. Again, we're still going to use other gaming engines, we're going to use other gaming technology, but for this group here, we've all arrived here for a reason, and I think we should leverage that. And then the key for this group is creating those new opportunities for partnership. So I know we have a little bit of time left today. We do want to discuss your roadmaps, what offerings you have that are, that are your discriminators, where we can pull them in, how you can see we can partner. Tell me you're doing something similar and that we shouldn't do, a specific aspect. Tell me where you think we could partner. And if anything, if you see an RFP or a customer need, you absolutely have my contact information. Let's collaborate and see what we can bring to the table. And I gave you a few examples. So happy to kind of exchange those now. I know we have a little bit of time left. Happy to chat through LinkedIn, set up post meetings of this, but Lockheed is pretty well invested in this. We are investing significant amounts of our R&D into it. And I think you're going to continue to kind of see results and some pretty earth-shaking developments from what I'm seeing from our team. So love it. I enjoy it. Thanks for having us here. And any questions to start off, or I'll sit down and we can kind of collaborate, I guess. So
Yeah.
cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. Hopefully your last name. Breed, B-R-E-E-D. Breed. Yep.